Did Israel Adesanya win $500,000 here we're talking about, in ex-girlfriend Charlotte Paldrow's legal case? I'm seeing this situation resurfacing. If you guys don't remember, about a year ago, Israel Adesanya, who is a Nigerian-born New Zealand mixed martial artist, right? He's a pro. Man was the middleweight champion. He was trending because his ex-girlfriend, who he had broken up with after only dating for about a year, was demanding some type of compensation after the divorce. Around that time, there was a lot of that weird stuff that was going on. There was a lot of weird stuff that was going on. And you know what else was going on? This, right? You had Ashraf Hakimi and his win when it came to the France family court system, where his wife tried to get this man's assets following their divorce, but they couldn't, because the assets were hidden under his mom's name. Now, were they actually hidden? Was this all on purpose? Did he foresee this being a contingency plan for the possibility of him getting got in divorce court? I don't know. What was surprising, though, and what surprised everybody, is that that shit worked. And since then, there's been a lot of conversation encouraging men to maybe pursue this route, so on and so forth, right? What does this have to do with Israel Adesanya? Well, there's this post, and this is sort of a fact check that I saw, millions of views, and they were talking about how she took him to court and she somehow has ended up paying him $500K. Turns out it's false. Turns out it's not true. But what is believable is the conversation that was had, that was very viral last year, of her looking for some sort of compensation, right? She thought that she contributed to this man being successful and probably expected him to pay in some form, maybe dispute over property or whatever. How do we know this? Well, there was a story post that he deleted that was pretty much kind of was in line with the time that they broke up, where he was saying, hey, I don't owe you money. I don't owe you this or that. And so people were wondering, why would she think she's owed anything? She's just a girlfriend. That being said, I think like this is a pretty good conversation to have. So first things first, Ashraf Hakimi's situation, though successful, is not the situation we have here. This is false. It's not true. If you go look up the story right now, you see a lot of people who are debunking this, and it's some made up news. I do think, though, that there is a conversation to be had about, is this the way that men should go when it comes to protecting their assets? How does this compare to, of course, right, we're not talking about like not getting married at all, because people say, oh, just don't get married. Okay, so people are going to get married who value marriage. That's, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen, right? For those men who are starting families and value marriage, is this the way to go? How does the Ashraf Hakimi situation compare? And by the way, if you don't know who he is, he's a Moroccan soccer player, footballer is what the rest of the world calls it. But is that a reliable strategy? I was really glad to see that this was covered by none other than the lead attorney, with this video that was titled, Divorce Attorney Reacts, Wife Crushed, Women Outraged as Ashraf Hakimi Wins Huge in Divorce. Now, this is a long video. I'm going to actually have my AI assistant, Barista Miss Coffee, summarize this video by the lead attorney. Miss Coffee, can you share the summary of this video, specifically from the perspective of how does this approach to protecting your assets compare to something like a prenuptial agreement? And will this work in the States? We got to remember that this whole situation was held in a different country, and I believe that was France.
Would Hakimi's put everything in mom's name tactic work in the US? In theory, it can be done. The attorney points out that many people, especially those who are undocumented in the US, e.g., some immigrants, often put property in someone else's name, a parent, sibling, or friend, because they cannot legally hold title. You see this outside divorce too. But for divorce purposes, it can also shield or hide assets from a soon-to-be ex-spouse if done far in advance.
Interesting.
But it's risky and not guaranteed. U.S. courts generally look at the substance, who actually earned the money, rather than just whose name appears on the title. If a judge decides you transferred assets solely to prevent your spouse from receiving them in a divorce, especially right before filing, this is typically called a fraudulent conveyance. Courts can undo or claw back those transfers. Additionally, putting your assets in a parent's name gives your parent true legal ownership. If the parent has debts, changes their will, gets manipulated by another relative, or passes away, you might lose everything you thought you had safeguarded.
Okay, so that's a good point right there, right? You got to take into consideration, because you've seen situations where people who are married, one of them wins the lottery. We had the situation with the wife that won like millions of dollars. She breaks up with or divorces her husband and does not tell him about the funds, probably tries to hide them. And it's illegal to do that with the plan of you preparing for divorce and hiding those funds. So I guess when Miss Coffee, from the video that she's summarizing, which is the lead attorney's video, is talking about whether this will work or not, it sounds like it depends on the perception of how it looks like in court. Did you do this right before your divorce, or is this the way just your life is set up in general? Is what I'm thinking would attribute to that being more of a solid legal stance in court.
Timing is everything. The attorney emphasizes that if you move money or property out of your name very close to filing for divorce, a U.S. judge is almost certain to declare that move fraudulent.
Okay.
If the assets were gifted years prior, or if they were always in someone else's name from day one and never in yours, then undoing that arrangement becomes more difficult for the spouse. However, you still face risks, e.g., your parent deciding to keep or divert the assets. Child support still must be paid. In the U.S., hiding or gifting away your salary to someone else's account does not absolve you of child support obligations. Child support is generally calculated on what you earn, not how much you claim to own at the moment of divorce.
That's a good point. Now, that's a good point. That's a good point. Because if you think about it, if he's earning millions of dollars, and we see this a lot in child support stories where men would talk about how they're being charged not on even what they're currently earning, but their earning potential. And so they're looking at, okay, those pay stubs, right? But when they hit, doesn't matter if they're going to a different account. It's like, this is the money that you're making.
Bottom line on Hakimi's approach in the U.S. It can be done, but you run big risks, both legal fraudulent transfer lawsuits and practical losing control of your own money if your parent or sibling mismanages or appropriates it. U.S. judges prefer to see a straightforward division of marital assets and do have tools to reach hidden or fraudulently transferred property.
Interesting.
2. Is it better to get a prenuptial agreement? Yes, far simpler and more reliable. The attorney repeatedly stresses that a well-drafted prenuptial agreement is the cleanest way to protect your property under U.S. law. A prenup clearly states what is separate, yours alone versus marital subject to division, how any appreciation in value is handled, how income is classified, and much more, all before you tie the knot.
All right, so that makes sense. Says here, the attorney repeatedly stresses that a well-drafted prenuptial agreement is the cleanest way to protect your property under U.S. law. A prenup clearly states what is separate, yours alone versus marital. And, you know, how ironic. FathersHaveRights.com features the lead attorney. So you guys can go get this guide that I put together for free, right? Free guidance, 100% free, you know, free information. If you need it, if you want it, go check it out at FathersHaveRights.com. Let's keep listening.
No risk of losing control. Unlike gifting your property to a parent.
And free with offer code review, right? 100% free. No catch. 100% free. Go get it.
Where you might lose ownership forever. A prenuptial agreement lets you keep the assets in your own name. You just designate them separate property in the event of divorce. There is no worry about your parents' will, your siblings' debts, or whether a judge might claw anything back because it's your property from the start, just governed by the prenup terms. Clear cut in court. U.S. courts will uphold prenuptial agreements if they meet basic requirements. Each party fully discloses finances. There's no coercion or last-minute surprise. Each side ideally has independent legal counsel. So long as it's signed properly and isn't unconscionable, a prenup is infinitely less messy than having to litigate whether you fraudulently transferred assets to your mother. In short, Hakimi's strategy under U.S. law, legally possible but very fraught with danger. Judges can unwind suspicious transfers, and you risk losing your own assets if the holder, your mother, a relative, or friend doesn't safeguard them, or is pressured to hand them over to your spouse. Get a prenup instead. The attorney's fundamental takeaway is that a prenuptial agreement is more reliable, more transparent, and still protects you. It avoids the risks of fraudulent conveyance claims and the hazards of letting someone else literally own all your assets. Ultimately, the attorney views the put it all in mom's name tactic as much more common than most people think, but also legally riskier and more complicated in a U.S. divorce than simply signing a solid prenup.
You know, at the end of the day, I think the decision, right, rests in you. If marriage is something that you value, it's all up to you. I'll be honest with you. I'm actually surprised that this, based on what the lead attorney there was saying, is more common than people realize. I was surprised. I thought that this is something that would definitely not be possible in the U.S., but it's always great to learn something new.